Okay, so you'll see that the word self-employed is in this section as well. We have two different deductions there that pertain to individuals who are self-employed. That first one was the self-employment tax. We've got that deduction for 1/2 of self-employment tax. This pertains to health insurance. So if an individual is self-employed and they pay for their own health insurance and they meet certain other qualifications, then they can deduct the amount that they paid for those health insurance premiums. This can be a really generous benefit, tax savings, because as we all know, health insurance is extremely expensive. So again, this is a for AGI deduction. You can take up to 100% of those premiums. So it's not 50% of it. So don't get it confused with the 1/2 of self-employment tax. Okay, this is up to 100% of those health insurance premiums. There are a couple of ways it can be limited though. So you cannot take a deduction for any amount in excess of net earnings from self-employment from the trade or business under which the coverage is provided. So if your health insurance premiums are $20,000, but your net earnings, so this is net earnings, not gross, but net earnings are $15,000, your health insurance deduction is limited to the $15,000. You can't deduct more than that $15,000. Okay, so that's what they mean here. You cannot take a deduction for any amount in excess of net earnings from self-employment. So you can't, like I said, net earnings are $15,000, health insurance premiums were $20,000. You don't get to take a deduction for all $20,000 in that case. Net earnings from self-employment are determined by reducing gross income by the regular expenses of the business. So we all know what net income is, right, as opposed to gross income. So net income. And you also have to subtract the deduction for 1/2 of the self-employment tax and any deduction for contributions to qualified retirement plans. So, for example, let's say we had a net income of $15,000 and we had health insurance premiums of $10,000, but we had, let's see, let me think about this. So if we have a deduction for 1/2 of the self-employment tax, so I may have to change that amount to make this work. So if my self-employment tax is 15.3%, right? So 15.3% of times 15,000. So it's $22.95. One half of that, so 1/2 SE tax is $11.48. So what we have to do is we have to subtract this from this to get what our net income, our earnings from self-employment. So 15,000 minus the 1/2 of self-employment tax. That's our deduction. So $11.48. So, whoops, fat fingers. $13,852. Let's say that this health insurance was $14,000. This is more than this. The most that we can take is $13,852. So we're leaving $148 on the table. Okay, so what you have to do is subtract that 1/2 of self-employment tax. And if there's any deduction for contributions to retirement plans, you've got to also subtract that, okay? So you can't include that when you're determining what the limitation is for the health insurance premiums. Here's another example. Theo, net earnings of $2,800 from self-employment. She paid $160 a month for health insurance. So paid $1,920 a year. She's entitled to, okay, entitled to a 4 AGI deduction of a whole $1,920. If the net earnings from self-employment were $1,500, her deduction is going to be limited to $1,500. But keep in mind this adjustment. I think you've got, it might be in your tax return problem. It might be somewhere else in your homework problems where you've got this little complication added in. So you got to pay attention to that. Second limitation pertains to the availability of other health insurance coverage. So if the taxpayer is entitled to participate in any subsidized health insurance plan maintained by any employer of the taxpayer or the taxpayer's spouse, a deduction is not allowed. So what this means is if my husband were self-employed, so I get health insurance, subsidized health insurance through DMAC, that means they help pay for it, even if it was just a little tiny bit that they help pay for, if it's subsidized. So if my husband was self-employed and he had his own health insurance, he would not get to take this deduction because he's eligible for subsidized health insurance through my employer. Or if the self-employed individual has other employment and they're eligible to participate in that other health insurance plan, they would not be able to take this deduction, even if they choose not to. If they're eligible to participate, then they would not be able to take that. So here's an example. Sophia, self-employed, stop. Net earnings from self-employment of $17,000. She has an individual-only health insurance policy through her business. She pays $145 a month. I don't know where she gets health insurance for $145 a month. I'd like to know. Miguel is her husband and he is employed, but Miguel's employer provides health insurance coverage for all employees and it's subsidized because they pay something toward it. They pay $100 toward the premium of the employee, even though it's not subsidized for the spouse. Doesn't matter. It's subsidized for the employee, so it's subsidized health insurance. Miguel can cover, he's eligible to cover Sophia under the policy, but they've chosen not to do so because the cost would be higher than her policy. Sophia cannot deduct any of her health insurance premiums because she's entitled to participate under a subsidized plan. The fact that she chooses not to does not matter. Okay, so those are the two limitations. One is a monetary limitation limited to the net income from the business that is supplying the health insurance, that the health insurance is under. And if you are eligible to participate in another subsidized health insurance plan, either through your employer or your spouse's employer, then you cannot take that deduction. What else do I want to say here? Oh, so there are some special rules for shareholder employees of S corporations. We're going to talk a little bit about S corporations when we get to the last chapter. It's a special type of corporation. It's usually small business. It's kind of like a mix between a corporation and a partnership. S corporation owners of S corporations who are also considered to be employees of that S corporation have some special rules with regard to self-employed health insurance when the S corporation is providing the health insurance for them. So that's what they're talking about here. Self-employed health insurance deduction is also available to a partner in a partnership and to a shareholder in an S corp who owns more than 2% of the stock in the corp. In the case of an S corp, wages from the corporation are included in self-employed income for purposes of determining the deduction limitation. So if they can be an employee as well as an owner and they're receiving a paycheck, then they can include the amount of that paycheck in this net income from the business. So That's what they're talking about here. All right, so that is self-employed health insurance deduction and the two limitations that go along with it. Any questions? Okay.